to me, the orchestra is the most fascinating organism there is. Yeah, I like sports. All that is wonderful. But to pull 80 people together on stage doing one thing, then someone who can be 20 years old sitting next to someone who's 85 years old, it's just the most beautiful manifestation of a pluralistic society that exists as far as I know.
Coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time.
Hello, Fremont. This is Brian, and you're listening to episode 82 of the Fremont Podcast.
Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
So let me get the names correct. So how do you say your name?
Jung-Ho Pak.
Jung-Ho.
With the hard J, like
Okay.
jungle.
Jung-Ho.
Jung-Ho Pak.
Pak. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Very good. And Barett.
Barett.
Yeah, just Barett.
Barett Hoover.
Okay, awesome. And so Jung-Ho, you are the conductor of the Bay Philharmonic.
Correct.
Okay. And you are the executive director?
Executive director.
Awesome.
That's right.
Very good. This was the Fremont, one time it was the Fremont Symphony, right? And then it recently changed to the Bay Philharmonic.
Yeah, we changed it about last fall.
Okay.
I've been here almost exactly a year now. I started mid-July last summer, and shortly after I started, we undertook a whole rebranding and name change. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, like, what brought you into that role? Like, what got you here? I think you said you lived in Oakland, right?
I live in Oakland.
Okay.
I lived in Hawaii before I came here.
Okay.
I came here for the job. It was a really great opportunity that I saw. I was looking for a change. I was looking for leaving Hawaii, which sounds...
Who does that?
I know, I get that a lot. But was definitely looking for a change and a new career, and found this job.
Cool.
And yeah.
Very good. And then what are the primary roles that you fill as the executive director then?
Really, it's, to support Jung-Ho in implementing the artistic plan, the vision that he has. He comes with a lot of really interesting ideas that I hadn't necessarily thought of before, which I'm sure he'll talk about. And fundraising and just make sure all the pieces come together.
That's cool. So it being since it was the Fremont Symphony, what I'm curious, does that change like the dynamic or the geographic like personnel that are involved in this? Because currently we're in Fremont. So has it always been like Fremont people involved in the symphony, or has it always been kind of like broader than that, but just based in Fremont?
Traditionally, it started in '64 as a community orchestra.
Okay.
It was the Fremont Newark Philharmonic at that time, and so it was primarily community members from Tri-City area. Now we're a professional orchestra now. We draw musicians from all over the Bay Area.
Okay.
So we're still very much based in Fremont. It's our home, but personnel-wise, we're all over the Bay. And our new performance home, starting in October, is at Chabot College in Hayward.
Okay.
So we haven't
so
really...
it's not right in Fremont.
We haven't really performed in Fremont.
Okay.
We performed at Smith Theater at Ohlone for a while, several years ago. But we're not... Aside from our offices being here and our primary audience base and donor base is mostly in Fremont.
And the history, I guess, the history of it being
and the history,
here.
yeah. But, the name change was really a part of that, of showing that we're really, broadening our reach to the entire Bay Area.
Okay. How long have you been the conductor here at the Bay Philharmonic?
Well, actually, only 1 year.
Okay.
As the official title is artistic director and conductor.
Okay.
But I was brought on as an artistic advisor about 4 years ago or something like that. And at the time, I was here just to strengthen the organization. But then after a while, I started seeing a lot more opportunity here, that there was a niche not being met here. The East Bay, as you probably know, the Tri-City area, is extremely fertile, extremely diverse community.
Absolutely.
Changed drastically over the last 10, 20 years. And I see that as a plus. People might see that as a kind of a challenge because so much of classical music is considered very Eurocentric. And now the East Bay, the Bay Area in general, has become very pluralistic. And And so the question, the kind of midlife question that we all have in classical music is, and by the way, we do far more than just classical music. We do Broadway and holiday pops, and this year we're doing Celtic music. Is what is our point? Why do we exist in 2023? And to me, the orchestra is the most fascinating organism there is. Yeah, I like sports. I like seeing five guys run up and down a basketball court. All that is wonderful. But to pull 80 people together on stage doing one thing, then someone who can be 20 years old sitting next to someone who's 85 years old. I don't think we have someone that old, but it's conceivable that it's just the most beautiful manifestation of a pluralistic society that exists, as far as I know.
That's great. I love the fact that it is, even as you were saying that, and you were talking about the community dynamics that we have here, it's almost like there's a small metaphor in it being a symphony that connects directly to our community as well. It's like, how do you take such diversity and have something so unifying, and you can look at a symphony and say, that's how you do it, you know?
Exactly. There's in an era of such cynicism where people think it cannot be done. You cannot bring two people together and agree on anything, let alone politics, that a symphony flies in the face of that. It says, absolutely, it can be done. And they're all brought together with the singular purpose of beauty and joy and love and humanity.
I was just talking to somebody else about this recently, and it's like when you think of the happiest place on earth, people, Disney World or Disneyland has claimed that title, right? But you think about that and like, why, what is it that makes it the happiest place on earth? Well, you have all these things that your imagination goes wild and you explore all these things. But I think I find fascinating that there's like this underlying joy or happiness that happens in our community, not because we've got all the thrills and bells and whistles, but more or less because of the diversity that has found a way to start working and living together. And I think that there's actually like this weirdly, there's this weird happiness that exists within our community that almost is without prescription. It's almost like it's kind of created its own sense of community and belonging.
I think that's extremely profound of what you're saying. And I think it's not, you're right. It's not the amount of ice cream shops that are on Main Street. It is the amount of gratitude. You have we were just talking about Afghan immigrants coming here. It's that they have found a place that is accepting, where they feel safe and that they feel like they can build a life. And I think that probably contributes a lot.
Yeah. And there's so many new people coming in who come here to be happy, to raise their kids, to start a family, to find a nice, quiet, middle-class existence.
Yeah.
And the longtime Fremonters embrace all the newcomers as well.
Absolutely. I think that's, I think that there is a diversity of demographics, not just in ethnicity or, culturally, but also age-wise. You have kids all the way to older people. I was just actually helping a neighbor today. We could barely understand each other, but they had water flowing out of their yard into the street, and we were looking and trying to figure out where's the water coming from. And but there was just kind of like this unique like happiness about that interaction that I had, that I was able to come out and help my neighbor, even though we weren't able to communicate in the same language, but it felt good. There was a special sense of joy in doing that.
I think that's what the incredible privilege of being a musician is, that you can present something that speaks directly to the heart. You don't need to have a Google translator. You just instantly make someone happy.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because you did a TED Talk on joy. And it was specifically in the content was focused on joy and beauty, right? Mm-hmm. So give me. I know that it's online. We can find it. We'll put it in the show notes. But in a nutshell, like, how has that idea of joy and beauty helped guide you into what you're doing as a conductor?
Well, not ironically, but predictably, I grew up being a musician without joy for a very, very long time. When I was learning piano, we were talking about practicing, hated to practice, wanted to go out and play baseball, playing clarinet. It was okay playing in a band. I enjoyed being in a band. However, I was never ever taught how to connect who I am with this instrument that I'm blowing my brains through. It's just, it was just a thing.
Can I ask what instrument it is?
Clarinet.
Okay.
Clarinet. That's why I'm so smart. It's because of clarinet. So I ended up going into classical music and studying at some of the most prestigious conservatories, USC and San Francisco Conservatory. And I left and I got a job, and I was fundamentally unhappy. And I was trying to emulate my teacher, my great maestro teacher. And I was realizing that this was not a path that I wanted to be on 20, 30 years from now. And so I started looking around and seeing the audiences being very small, very white, actually, and very generational. And I said to myself, how can we change this paradigm? So it wasn't difficult. I looked around and I said, who is A, the most famous classical musician, and B, who's having the most fun? And it was Yo-Yo Ma. And I was really befuddled by the fact that, I took all the music theory classes and music history classes, and not once did any of my teachers talk about that kind of joy that brings us to music when we were 12, 14, 16 years old.
Yeah.
I'm going, where did it go? And can we teach people to be like Yo-Yo Ma? Now, Yo-Yo didn't go to traditional conservatory. He actually, like a lot of really accomplished classical musicians, actually studied something else. I think he studied the humanities and something else. So it started me on this journey because I was teaching at a performing arts school, saying, can you teach joy? Can you, just as well as you can teach a violinist to have a really beautiful bow arm or a pianist to have a beautiful even trill, can you teach a child to be happy? And I won't go through all the details. It's a very long journey. But in the end, I found a pedagogy in where you can actually encourage a child or any musician to believe that their soul matters and then who they are matters on stage.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool.
We'll be right back. You can hear the rest of this conversation in just a moment.
Looking for a realtor who will keep your heart and mind at peace during the home buying process? Look no further than Jennifer Petroselli at Petroselli Homes Realty Group. Jennifer's dedication to her craft and clients is second to none. She sets the highest standard and makes sure her clients feel supported every step of the way. Just ask one happy client who said, quote, "We definitely would not have found the perfect home without the perfect realtor. Thanks again for the amazing work you do to keep the American dream alive." End quote. Contact Jennifer today and experience her dedication and expertise for yourself.
And now, back to our conversation.
I have a 10-year-old, and he loves to sing. He's the one I'm trying to get to take piano lessons, right? And he's the one I'm trying to get to practice. And he loves music. He's going to be in one of our local theater productions this next month as one of the lead roles, and he's excited about being able to sing and perform in that. But he has so much joy when it comes to any kind of music, I have found, I think as you were talking about that, I started thinking about my own experience with music, my own experience for going from my childhood to where I am now and seeing my son and thinking, man, you're exactly right. Like being able to find a way to be able to kind of like open that box of joy back up in our lives as adults and being able to say it still exists. It's still there. It didn't go away. It's just kind of been covered up or forgotten,
Well, can I say something to that? And I'm sure Barrett has some deep thoughts about this. Is that it's funny that when we hear a child sing, like your son, or someone shows some aptitude toward drums or piano, we instantly want to give them lessons and get them, onto a path. But I sometimes think that that's sometimes the beginning of the end. That the real magic is the hunger that they have and preserving that hunger all the way through.
Yeah, you were. I don't know if were we recording? I can't remember, but you were talking about the best meal that we eat is one that when we're hungry, right? So I've done backpacking and canoeing trips in Canada for like week-long trips, right? And like you're eating like
free-dried meals are the best when you're
ramen and you're eating all that stuff, but then you like stop at that first restaurant after you're back from that camping trip,
right?
And you're like, oh my goodness, this is like the best meal ever. And there is that joy of that moment. He's like, I've been at this restaurant before, I've eaten this food before, but it tasted nothing like this.
Have you ever had a backpacking meal at home when you're not hiking? It's the worst thing you've ever had.
It is. Who eats this?
On the trail, it is the best thing.
Yeah, exactly. I would tell people, I would say, if you want to, because I would tell people that I was like, if you want to enjoy your backpacking experience, try eating whatever meals you're going to take with you at home before you go to make sure you actually like it. And nobody likes doing that. Nobody likes doing that. Yeah, that's great. Do you have any? What thoughts do you have, Barett?
It's really interesting what Jung-Ho was saying about teaching joy, and I feel like when you start taking those lessons, when you start going to a conservatory, that joy is kind of taught out of you, and that's, we were talking about practicing earlier and how no one likes to do that. But if you think of that as just part of the music making process, part of the joyful process that you found when you when you started playing, then that's the key, is to finding that.
You played instruments,
I
or
played
were involved
saxophone.
in music? Okay.
Yeah. I came to classical music later. I played jazz and I played in a funk band in Baltimore in the 90s. And still play.
So those genres seem fun, you know, and I'm not saying that the orchestra isn't, because I mean, to be honest with you, I would love, like, I went to see the Oakland Symphony Orchestra play on the May the 4th, when they did all John Williams music, because it was May the 4th. And I got to sit up in the front, and it was just amazing. I just imagined myself being up there, being able to play with the orchestra. And so I'm not saying this orchestra symphony is not fun, but it just seems like jazz and, funk music seems to be like a fun genre to play.
Well, I mean, for different reasons. I mean, the improvisatory nature of it and just riffing off each other, and there's nothing better than that when you're in the zone with a bunch of people and you have no idea what's going to happen next. But sitting on a stage with 80 people as well has its own thrill and its own reward. So very different. Jung-Ho and I talk about this a lot, but we wish that our orchestral musicians had more of a improvisatory kind of nature to them, and had some of that training as well, so they're not just so stuck in their music all the time.
Is that possible? I mean, it just seems like to be. I mean, you can do. I feel like with a jazz band, you have individual instruments all kind of like doing their own thing, but when you have multiple of the same instrument, like a number of violins or a number of violas, and you're trying to like be more I mean, I don't know.
I mean, when you're in an orchestra, you have to play what the notes on the page. But there are ways that can inform your playing as well.
That's cool.
I think it's a good question, and I think you're right. In a jazz combo, especially where everyone's improvising and listening to each other, incredible satisfaction, because you know it's purely 100% you, of what you imagine and what you think. In an orchestra, I might liken it to, if you go to a great rock concert where 10,000 people are listening to the same thing, and there's this kind of, it's more than the performers. It's this sense of humanity that's coming together, or going even to a political rally where you all believe in the same thing and you're being inspired at the same time.
That's cool.
Except in an orchestra, you are your own inspiration.
That's cool. I like that. And actually, I was imagining that, like, because I was thinking, like, there is a sense in which you can view being one of several violins or a violinist, or one of several, whatever instruments, and view that as almost like a chain. You're chained to that. But in some sense, if you develop your own sense of identity as a particular player, you're not just tying yourself to a group of people. You're actually, in some sense, invigorating a group. You're bringing something bigger and better in your own development, I guess, to that group.
Well, and I think that's where the role of the conductor is absolutely key, because a conductor can either make 2.5-hour rehearsal go like that, or it can be interminable. And I think that's that's the magic. The conductor has to address each section and player as if they're having a one-on-one conversation.
That's cool. You said that Yo-Yo Ma was influential in helping you understand as far as the music and is there any particular conductor that inspired you as you've developed into being a conductor?
Well, sure. When I was young, Toscanini was everyone's idol at the time. A very old school conductor, a martinet, a dictator, but a passionate, brilliant musician. But as I grew up in college through the 80s and the ascendancy of Apple and Google and the whole management structure moved away from a top-bottom IBM model to something far more level playing field. And there's a new term that I love called radical inclusion management. And you see it in Netflix as well when they have their staff meetings. I don't know if you've ever seen their meetings, but they have instant feedback where on your phone you're able to give your feedback directly to what's happening in a meeting. So if someone's talking and it's a bunch of BS, you can give that feedback, and then the person's instantly getting back. The leadership is getting their feedback. That kind of radical inclusion, I think, is becoming expected now, either through TripAdvisor and Yelp and all of these Rotten Tomatoes, where people are giving the power is in the employee or the buyer, the consumer. And I think that conductors are now having to switch to that kind.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. I found it interesting, and I've only heard this, so I can't say that I have a documented or a particular source that I know that this is true of. But so years ago, Danny Kaye, the famous actor Danny Kaye, right? Mm-hmm. I heard the story, the legend, that he was invited to be the conductor of, I believe it was like the Boston Pops or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he had never conducted anything. He was not a conductor, but there was something about his personality and his charisma and his just love of life that when he got up there, I think it was it John Philip Sousa or whoever it was that was the conductor of the
John Williams.
John Williams. Okay. He basically said, I'd never heard them sound better than they did when Danny Kaye conducted them. And obviously there's probably qualifications to that. But the interesting thing is if you've ever watched Danny Kaye, or if you've seen him as a person, there is just kind of like this life and this joy that just oozes out of him. And I find it interesting because I've thought of that often in terms of like when I'm in a position or a role of trying to lead people. And I think there's a way that I could do it in a way that seems traditional or that seems to be like expected or predictable, but then there's a way that you're like, no, you step into that role and you're bringing the unexpected. There's some life there that doesn't necessarily require some sort of sustainment from the group that you actually infuse into it. And I've never seen you conduct, but I was watching your TED Talk and I was like, man, this guy's got life. And where does that life come from for you? Like, what is it that inspires you to do what you do as a conductor?
Well, I think two other conductors who inspired me was Leonard Bernstein and a conductor named Carlos Kleiber for very different reasons. But focusing on Leonard Bernstein, he was the very first American conductor who got on a podium and did not conduct like he was biting into a lemon in terms of just really being joyous and being full of humanity. That, I think, has influenced me a great deal, realizing, they say garbage in, garbage out, that unless the conductor is on the podium having a heck of a good time, you can't expect the musicians and ergo the audience behind you to have a good time. So first and foremost, I realize my job is to have a really great time. That if I'm not smiling and just getting the musicians to feel like they're 14 years old all over again, we're not going to reach the audience. But the other thing is, I think growing up I was born and raised in California. I was born in San Mateo, grew up in the Bay Area. Okay. Being a Californian, and being a Northern Californian in particular, I think has really shaped my view of television and of media. I grew up with MTV. I understand the relationship between visuals and audio. I love movies. I love theater. So I think, to me, I don't see conducting and music as being a one-sided art. I see it being a multimedia. And in fact, when we do concerts, we do incorporate video. We do incorporate lighting. We were just talking today about, bringing in an extra dramatic eye to help us create We don't call our concerts. We call them shows.
Nice.
And I think of them equal to any Broadway show. Is that right, Barrett?
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. The story you told of Danny Kaye says a lot about the role of the conductor, I think, and then a lot of ways how the conductor can shape the performance without having any musical experience. Obviously, it's not just what you see on stage at the performances. There's rehearsal process. The conductor has to know the score inside and out. But having somebody exuberant, joyous on the podium really makes all the difference. And there are so many conductors that I watch that just are up there just waving their arms, and I'm thinking, what are they doing? What's the point of this? Why are they there? Jung-Ho is the most dynamic conductor I've ever seen, and his back is usually to the audience, and it's still, people say all the time how entertaining he is to watch.
That's great. You have an entertaining back.
Yeah. I think he's well aware that it's,
So you mentioned earlier that he's brought some creative ideas that it's your job to employ and figure out how to make all that happen. What are some of the ideas, or what are some of the things that you're working on right now as you enter into the new season?
I love the show aspect of everything that we do. And I come from, as I said, kind of a more popular music background. I also had some theater background. And I've been involved in all the technical aspects of theater. So I love bringing that into it. And this is actually the first symphony orchestra that I've worked for. I used to work in opera, which is of course very theatrical. So I love that I can bring in this element to it, and not only for a Broadway show, not only for a holiday show, but for our classical music shows as well. We'll throw some projections. We'll do some nice lighting. We don't differentiate between popular and classical. It's all just good music.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I love that. It goes back to that idea. I was talking to somebody else about this recently. There's a movie that I've enjoyed watching recently, and it's inspired me in this way. It was called The Biggest Little Farm. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the whole point is to find this place of they're trying to achieve perfect harmony.
Correct.
In like all the diversity, the biodiversity in on this farm, right? And so there's this symbiotic relationship that happens between all these different organisms that brings everything in life together and makes everything flourish and healthy and so on. Yes. And it's just interesting. Is like that whole concept has come up several times in this conversation. To what you're saying, it's like we're not just limited this to just it's not a concert. It's not just an instrument. Like, we're going to fuse all these different elements, the sensory elements, visual and got to get some smells in there or something. Find ways to be able to incorporate so many different elements to make it a show, and not in a show way that is disturbing, but in a show way that is enlightening and inspires the imagination, which I think is great.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure when I came into this role how I would do with just, being with a symphony, as opposed to an opera or theater company. And so, as I was saying, having that theatrical element really makes such a huge difference. And not calling it a concert, calling it a show, having to change my vocabulary a little bit, not calling our ticket buyers patrons, their customers, their guests.
That's great. Yeah. And the thing is I think you have imagination. Like, there's a hope when you change a name like that, or you're trying to in some sense reinvent something that exists, but I think that what happens is you have a desired outcome, but then there's the actual outcome. And I think sometimes the actual outcome can be more inspiring and more exciting than what you were imagining in the first place.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I love the fact that Biggest Little Farm.
Yeah.
And that you can't, in our industry of classical music, or what is traditional classical music, even though we don't ever use the word classical music. I hate the word classical music. It's completely a Madison Avenue term. But in that profession, there's so many things where they force feed. Like many farms will use pesticides, and they'll use genetically altered things to control nature. And I am very much in the camp of organic farming, farm to table, and that's the way that we approach our shows. It is farm to table organic food that is sincerely made, made with incredible humanity and risk. And there's a lot of risk in what we do because, like the farm, you have to trust nature to do. And for us, it's not necessarily the trees, but it's people.
Yeah.
That you have to trust people, our audience, whether they're Afghan immigrants or Chinese, second generation, or Latino, that it doesn't matter where they come from or who they are. They all have a heart.
That's great. Yeah. I was going to say, not to belabor that whole biggest little farm metaphor too much, but the whole point, the thing that changed everything around, that was like the hinge point of the life of all of that, was the soil. And I think that there's a sense in which the soil, where the organisms grow, the thing that gives them life, has to have that health. In some sense, when you have a community of, like, whether it's musicians or whether it's just a community of neighbors or whatever, there's a what's the soil like? You know, what is it like where the people are taking root? You know, and in some sense, if you're trying to cultivate that particular environment for those particular people that are going to be involved in that community, I think that's where that lies ultimately, is in the soil of that community.
It's the community, it's the musicians, but also, the community that we serve, other arts groups, other nonprofits. I pride myself on being able to reach out to other groups and developing long-term relationships with them and not just be transactional with them. So
I love that. The relationships are huge. Yeah. That's exactly right. And building relationships even in amongst the symphony itself, that's really cool. I want to hear about the upcoming show. Like, the season started, right?
Starting October 1st.
October 1st is the new season, and that's 23-24.
Yep.
Okay.
We just started selling single tickets, which you can get on our website, bayphil.org.
Okay.
Jung-Ho's put together an amazing season. We do 4 concerts every few months, and really something for everybody.
It's very purposefully accessible. Broadway, holiday in December, which, by the way, has a very diverse angle to it all. We have folklorico dancers called Danza Mexico dancing on this program, and just a whole array of artists. In March, on St. Patrick's Day, we have a Celtic celebration. We couldn't pass it up. Couldn't do anything else on Sunday,
awesome.
March 17th.
That's awesome.
Other than a really spectacular, we've got a hip Irish band, got amazing fiddlers, Scottish influence as well.
Oh, that's cool.
So if you have a Celtic background, or especially if you don't, like me, you're going to love this show. And then we end the season with the beautiful music of Tchaikovsky with a Van Cliburn piano gold medalist named John Nakamatsu joining us, doing Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 1. So, I'm the kind of person that goes to a buffet. I love buffets, and I get a little bit of every single little dish, and that's what this season and every season's like.
That's cool. That's very cool. So what do you have? What is the job that you have before you then? Like, what does this look like for you in making this a success for the symphony and for our community?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just selling tickets, updating the website. We just working with a new marketing company doing our digital marketing. So developing these relationships. Still I've got a year under my belt here at this company. Seeing how it goes, and coming back from the pandemic was kind of a rebuilding effort. So we're still doing that, trying to expand our donor base and our ticket sales.
That's great. What does it look like? Like, let's just say that for the common person in our community that is not a music, like a showgoer.
They're my target audience.
Yeah. So what is it that you want to communicate to them that might be a misunderstanding that they need to hear, that they need to know in order to be able to, like, buy into this, to buy a ticket, to show up at these shows?
That we're not a typical symphony. Don't get turned off by the word symphony or Philharmonic. We purposefully changed our name to include the word Philharmonic because we love that word. Literally, it means the love of sound or the love of harmony.
Okay, that's great.
Which is
I love
great.
that.
Which is what we're all about.
Yeah.
So just to realize that this is a show. It's not your typical sit down and sit quietly and enjoy some classical music.
That's great.
We want you to clap. We want you to cheer. Whatever the mood strikes is
I love that.
And we do. I mean, I'm not kidding. We truly exist for the person who would never give us the time of day. We truly exist for the person who's never been to hear a symphony or even imagine buying a ticket to a symphony. And I promise when they come, and we hear this over and over and over again, they were completely blown away because it was nothing like they never thought that it could be as engaging as that someone on stage would actually communicate, use English in terms of simple language about explaining the music, sharing the joy. I think that is probably the single most common comment we get is just that, where has this been all my life?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Jung-Ho is so great on stage and talking to the audience and making it, explaining things, if it's a classical show. Just really dynamic. I had an odd complaint at a couple concerts ago. Somebody was complaining that somebody was dancing in the aisle. And could I please do something about that?
They're like,
and
no,
I was like,
we'll encourage
no,
that.
actually, I'm not going to do anything about that.
That's great. I love
when
that.
do you hear that at a symphony concert?
That's awesome.
But let me say one more thing. It's about quality. Quality really does matter.
That's good.
Not only on stage, and we're bringing 3 wonderful Broadway singers on our opening night at Chabot. It's our first concert at Chabot. We couldn't be more thrilled about it. It's a beautiful hall, wonderful acoustics, great crew, easy parking. We're just so thrilled to be there. Every single concert, we try to bring the very top artists. But also, another radical idea is that that's only half of the price of the ticket. The other half has to do with the kind of fun atmosphere that we're creating. And Barett and I have talked and continue to talk a lot about how to make it not feel like a concert, but really like a party.
That's cool. I love that. And it is different. I used to tell people when I play music loudly, it might be affecting my hearing. I don't know. My wife seems to think I don't hear things when she's talking to me, and maybe it was because I've listened to music loudly. But I used to tell people I don't like to listen to music. I like to experience it, and I think that's what I'm hearing from you guys is that you want something where people are not showing up just to listen to a symphony play. You're actually there to experience what they're playing and what they're doing.
From the minute they walk in the door, it's a visual thing. It's an experience. It's a customer service. It's, from our ushers, treating them nicely to what they can buy in the lobby. It extends to our website and the whole sales experience. So we look at everything.
That's great.
I often say that we're not in the music business; we're in the hospitality business.
I love that. Yeah.
And I say that with great honor.
Yeah.
With some of the great restaurants, some of the great hotels. And we're kind of like a spa for the soul in that way. Yeah.
I mean that's a great point because I do think that and I greatly respect and I will say I personally enjoy somebody who is devoted to their craft and somebody who really is even a snob as to what they do and what they expect. Like they're not willing to settle for something cheap or something less. Like I really appreciate that. However, not everybody can enjoy that to the same degree that particular musician can enjoy what they do, And so for somebody who finds a way to take their skill, their ability, their life, their joy, but be able to share that, to find a way to be able to invite anybody into that, I think it's fantastic. I think that's something that we need to be able to do.
And hopefully in the process that audience member will experience something new as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just accessible. It's not just something that they're already familiar with. They will get a new experience out of it.
Yeah.
And that's a very conscious decision for us.
That's good.
You can either be an orchestra for the wealthy and educationally inclined, or you can be for everybody, which is, those are fighting words.
Yeah.
Everybody. You don't mean everybody. Yes, we mean everybody.
Yeah.
And that's very, very aspirational. But in a time now where we're just so divided, and our society and our planet needs us now more than ever, we don't see our role as just being another music box. But we are actually here to give beauty and love, to transform people's hearts, so that we create community. Because I love Netflix. But the problem with digital content is separating us.
Yeah.
And live performance are the last bastion of people coming together and actually seeing another person's face. And we're on the front lines of that.
That's cool. That's great. Well, is there anything else that we can share with the community that would give them what they need to know to be able to enjoy and take part in this? I mean, I'm hoping that we can share this, people excited to be out there. I'm hoping, I want to bring, I'll say one more thing and don't want to keep, I love what you guys are doing, but I tell people, one of the things that I love about live concerts, and not a concert, but a show, things I love about what you guys are doing is, today, technology has made everything so quick and easy and accessible. Unfortunately, I think that it has also cheapened the craft. So, I mean, just as an example, if I wanted to listen to something at home, I would just say, "Hey, Google, play," and then a song will come up, whatever song it is. And typically Google chooses the best version of whatever that song is if there's multiple versions of it. So I get to listen to it in a moment. It costs me nothing. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to do anything. I simply am asking and it's there. And I think that is actually a disservice to our to our society, because so I love taking my son and my family to see live concerts for the purpose of helping them to realize, you see, every single person up there has given a significant amount of their life and their attention to be a part of something bigger than them. On top of that, the person, whoever wrote the music, has devoted their life to the practice of being able to develop something that's worthy of being played. So not only, so you have decades of time represented in a single recorded piece or a single performed piece by an orchestra or a symphony, and then everyone has to work hard to do that together. And then when we're talking about the actual recording, then you have to talk about the engineer's time and the people who are all behind the craft of capturing that and being able to develop it in order for us to be able to listen and put it on an MP3 and put it online and to stream it. And so everything in that one song, by me just saying, "Hey, Google, play this," I am actually harnessing years and years and significant chunks of people's lives to be able to have that moment, to be able to listen to that. And I think for me, when I see so many people who have committed their life and time to being able to hone their craft and to be able to share it, I look at that and say, I need to be reminded of that, because if I forget that, then actually the world around me becomes cheapened. Yeah. It becomes disposable. I can turn it on and turn it off as quickly as easily as I want. So I think that actually what you're doing for our community is reminding us that there's good in the community, there's value in the community, there's things to be appreciated and enjoyed in the community that are not easy to come by. Yeah. We think they're easy to come by, but they're not easy to come by.
Yeah, it takes lots and lots of work and effort on the part of many hundreds of people. And that's the best thing that you can't find anywhere else about live performance. Yeah. I mean, you're sitting in a space, you're completely in the moment. Hopefully you're not distracted by other things. You're in the moment. It's music that goes out into the ether and is gone.
That's great.
But you're experiencing this thing with, several hundred other people. You're all experiencing the same thing at one time in a darkened theater, and nothing can replace that.
That's awesome.
It's the best feeling in the world.
I was making the analogy to the organic food movement and Alice Waters and Chez Panisse and that whole revolution of called the slow food movement. I would say that we are the slow listening movement. That we're trying to dissect and not just flip on a switch and just boom, here's music, but rather to explain and to present music in a way that people can actually savor.
That's great. That's great. Well, I hope that this season is a great season, and I hope that we can communicate with our listeners what you are doing, inspire people to get out there, and I'm excited to get out there. I want to bring my family to see
your son
to see the show.
We love kids.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we're very, very proud to be part of the Tri-City area of Fremont and surrounding cities. Even though we're performing in Hayward, we still have a strong connection to the children, the families, and the community in Fremont. Always will.
That's great.
And so
we have a youth orchestra program.
Yeah, tell me about that. I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. Bay Phil Youth Orchestra, led by Judy Lamb. It's a wonderful program. A lot of Fremont kids, but from all over the East Bay participate. They rehearse once a week, and then put on a couple of concerts a year, and they're really talented kids. Really,
where are
amazing.
those performed, or where can people find out?
We're
about
going to
that?
be there's a summer program. It's coming up the last week of July.
Okay.
We perform usually. Irvington Presbyterian Church is one of our venues, and then we'll be doing our side-by-side concert next spring at Chabot, and that's where the kids get to perform with members of our professional orchestra.
Cool.
It's a really
That's
unique
awesome.
experience for them. It's a really wonderful program, and auditions are happening now if anyone wants to sign up.
There you go. That's awesome. I think that's one of the things that our community is like. I think that like I actually interviewed somebody else at this table in this room for I think it was the month of April or May when it was the arts and culture,
creativity month.
But we talked about the things that are so many things that are missing in our community regarding arts, and I just think that being able to find people and organizations like you that are willing to champion this when it's so many. I mean, like the schools are defunding the arts programs, and there's so many other things going on in our community that are kind of like allowing it to go away or even pushing it out. I think doing what you're doing in some sense, not only maintaining it, but reinventing it and then like putting it back out there and say, don't forget, remember, I think we need that. And so I love what you're doing.
It's vital for a healthy community. You've got to have the arts.
Exactly.
I mean, even if everyone doesn't consume it, it just creates this camaraderie. It creates a sense of joy that we were talking about, civility. And even though, unfortunately Fremont doesn't have a great performance venue, if it did, we'd be performing in Fremont because we love Fremont.
Yeah.
But we're here. There are other arts groups here doing great work, and we're a part of that community, and we love being here.
That's great. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome. I love meeting you guys.
Yeah.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah. And I'm excited to hear and see the season that you guys have ahead of us. So
Excellent.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This episode was hosted and produced by Ricky B. I'm Gary Williams. Andrew Cavett is the editor. Rachel Prey is the print editor in charge of our newsletter. Scheduling and pre-interviews by Sarah S. Additional reporting by Mark Emmons. Music provided by Soundstripe.com. You can find everything we make, the podcast, our newsletter, and all of our social media links at thefremontpodcast.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you would, please leave a review on iTunes. Your reviews help other people find this podcast. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.
And we do. I mean, I'm not kidding. We truly exist for the person who would never give us the time of day. We truly exist for the person who's never been to hear a symphony or even imagine buying a ticket to a symphony. And I promise when they come, and we hear this over and over and over again, they were completely blown away because it was nothing like they never thought that it could be as engaging as that someone on stage would actually communicate, use English in terms of simple language about explaining the music, sharing the joy. I think that is probably the single most common comment we get is just that, where has this been all my life?
This is a Muggins Media podcast.